Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I'm Jay, and this is a show where we hang out and we talk about games, board games, card games, primarily role-playing games, miniature games. Good morning to John Doom, Grom, and Tink and everyone else in the chat. Happy June 12th, which is a very important date to me. It's the second anniversary of the day I went into the hospital with bacterial meningitis. So 2 years since I said, "Not today, death." Uh, Actually, 2 years by the grace of God. So I figured, why not celebrate life with a review of the Shucked Oyster. Hey, Black Lodge Game is in the chat. Good to see you. I'm actually reviewing your book, which I assume is why you're here this morning. So this is the Shucked Oyster, and it is a book for Shadowdark and Adventure Conqueror King. Those are the stats. But honestly, this book can be dropped into any fantasy game, or in fact, you probably could get away with it in a sort of a modern urban fantasy game with a little bit more work. And this is not an adventure. This is a 264 page location. It is a interwoven adventure site with compelling NPCs, strange mysteries, dark and terrible cults, as well as several dungeons to explore. It's not an adventure in sort of the modern conception of an adventure, right? A modern conception of an adventure is you will start at point A, you will plinko machine down through the adventure, and you will come out at the end having played through a story. No, this is a module a la the Village of Hamlet, although much more concise, much more focused, and very entertaining. I have dropped this into I actually dropped this into my Palladium Fantasy game. The group just made it to the town of Winthorpe, and the lovely ladies of the Shucked Oyster are about to call to them. So, what is the Shucked Oyster? Well, if you've been like JM, where have all of the fantasy brothel supplements that I've wanted been all my life? They're right here. First of all, check out the cover, done by the Basic Expert, same person who did the cover of Horde Wars, the other game that we reviewed. And again, yes, John, this is actually all statted out primarily through for Shadowdark, and then at the end it has, I'll allow it, the appendix is the Adventure Conqueror King stats. So the Shucked Oyster is a fantasy brothel. It is a ramshackle building on the verge of falling down. It's been burnt down multiple times, run by a less than reputable madam, and on the surface seems like a great place to carouse, right? I mean, it harkens back to the origins of our hobby, which are deep in the pulp genre. So the works of Lieber and Howard, those characters carouse. It's a place to get rumors. It's a place to blow off steam. It's a place to relax. It's a place to, well, if you can't find love, you can at least find someone at the Shucked Oyster. And that's where the mystery starts, because the Shucked Oyster has been burnt down several times. There are several rumors that kind of allow the PCs to be drawn in to the intrigue and the mystery of the Shucked Oyster. And I'm not going to get too deep into this because I know that John Doom enjoys Shadowdark. I know a lot of the iconic patrons enjoy Shadowdark. I would not want to spoil this for you, but you are not getting an adventure. Let me be clear on that. You are getting hours of intrigue and mystery and dungeon crawling at an adventure location. I hope that's making sense. The writers from Black Lodge Games did not just come up with a, as I said, kind of a linear story. They've created this interwoven web of mysteries and personal goals and complex NPCs. The women at the brothel all have their own little goals and desires. The people of the town have their goals and desires. The Hellfire and Brimstone drunk priest has his own desires. And all of those kind of, as the players interact with the characters, can uncover what's actually happening. And there is an amazing mystery at the base, literally the foundations that the Shucked Oyster are kind of built on. You get a cult dedicated to a demon lord, Malchimpus, which, you know, it's essentially the bad monkey cult, and ties into kind of the folklore that I think they were drawing on from this. There is definitely a monkey's paw MacGuffin, if you will, to search through and uncover. And so you have cults. You have actually several cults. You have multiple factions. If you enjoy faction play or allowing the PCs to sort of align to one side or the other, this is a great adventure site for your campaign. We've got vampires, we've got cultists, we've got demons, we've got monsters masquerading as prostitutes. We have madams with a dark and tragic, very tragic backstory. Other adventuring parties out trying to solve the problems of the area. So essentially, even though this is very system or setting agnostic, when you drop the Shucked Oyster into your campaign setting, you are actually dropping in years of plot behind the scenes. Now, of course, it would not be a fantasy brothel location site if you were not able to enter the brothel and engage in activities. And they have done a remarkable job of setting up a very titillating location, and yet providing a well, I'm going to read this note. Handling settings. The final note on the Shucked Oyster. While this supplement presents an entertaining brothel for your use in your campaign, it is not intended for extensive role-playing of sexual encounters. Our design goal is to provide a jumping-off point for fun and interesting adventures, not for personal kinks. For players who want to take this game in the latter direction, we can only humbly suggest that you try being normal. We realize this may be difficult for some of you. It's not the Dark Eye supplement that was put out as an April Fool's joke. That is a 300-page supplement on rules for engaging in Congress with NPCs and players. I'll be honest, that was like my initial hesitation in getting the Shucked Oyster. It's like, it's a fantasy brothel. I'm not sure where they're going with this. And I opened it to that sidebar and went, cool, I'm in. You do have a oyster modifier that is affected by actions that your players take, both in town and related to the brothel. And that acts as a modifier to reaction rolls to see how the women of the Shucked Oyster kind of respond to the party. It's an interesting mechanic that sort of abstracts the more delicate nature of adventuring in and around a brothel. But that said, there is a menu of sorts, if you will. There are social mechanics, and again, the carousing tables are great. And leaning into the Shadowdark sort of 5e with an OSR mindset and that of Axe, the random tables in this are spectacularly good. Thoroughly enjoy that. If you like Shadowdark, you're going to find the layout is very similar to the Shadowdark layout. The art is great throughout. I will warn for if this kind of thing bothers you, there is some nudity in the book. It is an adventure site about a fantasy brothel, so gotta take that with a grain of salt. There is no explicit art, if that makes sense. It's very much in the same vein of like the Cults of RuneQuest books, where there is nudity throughout, but none of it is hyper-sexualized or intentionally gratuitous. So at this point, I'd like to just pause and say, hey, if you are James, hate 5e but love Shadowdark, how does that even work? Here's the thing. Yeah, especially, Tink, the Book of Fire and Sky. Some of those goddesses are downright scary. So, a little bit of a spoiler. I know I said I wasn't going to do that, but to me, where this adventure shines is the mystery. And so I want to pull back a little bit on the mystery. So if you are planning on playing in the Shucked Oyster, banished from the chat. The real theme here, at least my take on the theme of the Shucked Oyster, is about desire. And it's interesting that they set it in a brothel, which is all about desire and kind of thwarted paths to desire, if you will, or dead ends to desire in sort of a ontological or cultural sense kind of that exists in this pseudo-medieval fantasy world that we play in, right? In most fantasy games based off of medieval influenced worlds, marriage exists to provide children to carry on your bloodline, to carry on the line going forward. So a brothel, which would produce only bastards, is sort of a dead end of desire, right? It fulfills the desire in the short term, but doesn't actually produce anything further on. And they pair that with this idea of the monkey's paw, which if you are not familiar with the monkey's paw is a fairy tale about a cursed paw that grants wishes and purposely invokes those wishes, manifests them in the worst possible way. And in fact, there is a little sidebar in here that says, do not be generous if people make a wish. Like, you should interpret it in the worst possible way. So again, we have this theme of thwarted desire. The idea that what you desire is kind of right here, and yet when you finally grasp it, it is twisted or corrupted in some sense. Sure, John Doom, I had it. It's in the show notes, but let me pull that up for you right now. Should have been slightly more prepared. All right. 1 second, John Doom. I'll get that link in there for you. Now you can get this as POD or the PDF over at drive-thru. All right, so again, we have this idea of thwarted desire, right? And that's interesting to me because as you start to unravel the mystery of why does the Shucked Oyster keep burning down? Why does it keep attracting these chaotic creatures? There is a I want to make sure I'm getting this, remembering this correctly. Yep. There is a Medusa, veiled Medusa prostitute that you can encounter in the Shucked Oyster. Yes, they have Bloodmore. Actually, let me put that in the chat as well, and I'll make sure I update that in the show notes as well. Bloodmore. Here. And they have the Cults of Zahat coming out, which I can't wait to review when it comes out. Because here's the thing. I think the guys at Black Lodge Games get that evil can be an ontological reality and should be in your games. And that doesn't mean that they're condoning. That doesn't mean that they're encouraging evil actions, but just the fact that if we're playing games that matter, then that what we fight should actually, it should matter that we stand up to it. So, I know that several companies have removed completely the idea of slavery from their games, and I've looked to the Slaver series. Like, slavery was never a positive thing in Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, you were meant to fight and end the slavery. Oh, I would appreciate that. I would love to review it. And I'm going to have the Black Lodge Games guys on a Beyond the Table episode to talk about their game design theory, why they are producing the content and the books that they are, and just have a hangout, probably with some bourbon on my side. So I would love that. Thank you. So that theme resonates through the entirety of the book. And I don't just mean on like, I'm going to hit you in the face with it, right? This is something that's clearly written into the book, but in a very subtle way. Even when you come down to the different women you're going to interact with at the brothel, each of them has their own desires for their lives that have somehow been thwarted or twisted. There is a woman in the brothel who wishes to become an adventurer and is currently training to be an archer with a cyclops, but has to like cover one eye because the cyclops' techniques don't work if you have depth perception. It's fantastic. So, as I said, with this book, you are getting 265 pages of adventure site locations, complex NPCs, interwoven to draw the players into a mystery that they could end up saving a town that doesn't even realize that it's in need of saving. And then it's also filled with great appendices, including another cave. My favorite is the Humidor, because Madame Vice smokes cigars, and they are magical cigars. And so you have things like Goodland's Grace, rolled in gold leaf and wrapped with a silver label, emblazoned with the image of a throbbing bicep. This cigar has a potent masculine musk. When you smoke it, you get +1 to your charisma for the next 24 hours, but a -2 penalty to all reaction check with monsters for the next 24 hours. I love stuff like this. This is just... it's great. I got it because I'm a huge fan of Adventure Conqueror King, but I kind of fell in love with the whole module. So, well done to Black Lodge Games. Go check it out. The links are in the show notes. Check out the Shucked Oyster. I didn't think I would be talking about how great a adventure set around a fantasy brothel would be, but here we are. Let's see. James likes bourbon. I will share. I will. The bar is always open, James. If you are down here in at any point, you let me know. Come over and we'll have several drinks. I do tend to bring a bottle of bourbon to Gamehole Con, to every con I go to. So John and James, there will be a moment of shared whiskey among us in October. Grom says happens to live. Ooh, Grom. Well, maybe next year. So that's it. Go check out the Shucked Oyster. Again, fully statted out for Shadowdark and for Axe in the appendix, which means it's also fully compatible with 5e and any BX clone. But again, I could run this as a Savage Worlds adventure with basically no prep. Just drop it in and go. So that's it. That's it for today. That's it for this week on Behind the Screen. Very glad to be here with all of you. As that almost ended 2 years ago. Cheers. Thanks to everybody who's been along to the ride. Big thanks to Tink and John Doom, who really kind of helped when all of that collapsed. Tink being a huge supporter, and John Doom really kind of helping me out with some other stuff. So appreciate all of you. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screen, and I hope you all have a good one. Until then, I'll see you next week. Bye.